help you move forward and lead.
Hey guys, welcome to the Four Awards podcast. My name is Michael Azarish Matthews, and I am joined with two awesome fellows today. Doom is not here, unfortunately, but Scott
hates us.
He does
hates
hate us. He really does. Well, this is the
He'd
second
rather
time.
spend time with a tiny version
I
of
know.
him. That asshole.
his little spawn, and that's the second time we've had to sync without him. It's just
I know, it's depressing me.
It's not easy, but
It's not a good way to start a podcast.
Haberdashing's here.
Aspiration was just injuring himself
Howard,
trying to sync the podcast. It's really difficult.
Yeah. But so we got a good episode for you guys today. A really good concept to talk about. But before that, I'm here with Haberdashing and Frost. I want to introduce you guys. You guys wouldn't listen. It's unfair.
Whatever. Let's go.
Okay.
I'm
news.
here. I'm back.
News. Big news. The new website launched. About a month ago now. 2 weeks. 3 weeks.
2 weeks now.
Not a
yes.
month.
It's somewhere in between there, 2 weeks to a month. But Trinity4CeNetwork.com, that's the episode, or that's the website. So go there. Pretty cool, new stuff always being added to. So, and then Patreon, of course, always support us with the Patreon. We really appreciate it, guys. But that's actually it for news. We try to keep it short this week because we got a lot to talk about.
A lot to talk about.
A lot to talk about. So we're gonna actually hop right into the trinket tip.
Oh, okay.
What?
Oh, I thought we were going to talk about Kindred.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, when we could talk about Kindred at any point now in the next 10 minutes.
All right.
Let's talk about Kindred now.
Okay, fine. Let's talk about
Kindred now.
Kindred
Yeah.
it is. Let's start Kindred.
Yeah. I mean, anyone listening, 520 launched. Kindred's out now, finally.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty interesting champ.
Yeah, for sure.
Actually, like a range champion designed to be in the jungle. So just quick tips on Kindred for playing or going up against Kindred. Remember, like their passive.
Oh god.
Mark of the Kindred.
I want to talk about this, but maybe
It's really
later.
cool passive. I mean, like, just know basics here. Mark of the passive,
real
stacking
quick,
that up.
I'm gonna chime in here. I
Okay,
know I mentioned
go ahead.
this in 4 words, whatever. So Kindred is technically a they.
Yo,
because
okay.
It's two
I just
people.
said.
Yeah, but
Yeah, no, you
real.
said there, but you didn't explain why.
But at the same time, like, you do only really control Lamb and Wolf follows you. Like,
True.
while
Yeah.
you do, like, you move Wolf around and command him, but at the same time, it's not like you control both things at the same time. You control Lamb and Wolf follows. It's the same thing with Nunu. You technically control Wilhelm, but Nunu is guiding Wilhelm, but you don't say they, you just say Nunu, because Nunu's the core... Wilhelm, whatever.
Willump.
Wilhelm, whatever, same thing. I've been playing a lot of Borderlands recently.
Yeah,
so.
I can tell.
Anyway, but the point still stands, right? You're referring to the one that's predominantly part of the group. So I feel like her or they is okay. I'm gonna say her, so don't get fucking mad at me if I say her, because I'm not gonna stop.
It's really
so
hard to just say they.
I'm gonna say her, and
But-
I'm also probably gonna call her Lamb.
Fair enough. So back to actually talking about Kindred here. So the Mark of the Kindred, don't have enough time to really get into the meat of this, but what you need to know is that Kindred will mark both champions and jungle monsters. Killing those champions and jungle monsters makes Kindred do a % of her target's current health. So stacking that up really makes Kindred really strong.
Yeah, it's stackable. That's the key bit. When you kill a mark, it stacks up. So.
And if you're playing a game and you see this mark appear above your head, that's probably what it is.
Yeah. So, don't be too caught out by that. The rest of the abilities, I'm going to leave a lot of this up to the proper when they decide to cover this, because they're going to do it in a lot more detail than we really have time for here. But Dance of Arrows, you basically turn into Callista for a jump.
I love it.
Yeah, and when you use Wolf's Frenzy, that gives you a whole zone where you can be Callista.
It's so great. I'm like, this girl looks like Callista and Fiora combined, and I totally dig it.
Yeah, the other big thing about Kindred is their ult called Lance or Spite. This thing is like a Bard ultimate, basically,
It's
where
kind
you
of
can
like
save
it's like a
and fuck people
Tryndamere
over.
zone.
Right,
Yeah.
it's a Tryndamere zone. That's
nuts.
exactly what it is.
Man, imagine that with a Tryndamere and a Kale and a Guardian's Angel. He
No
never
one's died.
dies.
Yeah. But basically, what it does is you have this large AOE area, and inside that area, no one, both champions, monsters, allies, and opponents, cannot die within there while that's still up.
They can take damage though,
They can take damage down to a certain percent,
and then
down to 10% of their maximum health. And then once anyone who's left inside of that area when it expires is then healed a flat amount. It starts at 200 and it ranks up to 300. So
Yeah.
like Bard, you can really fuck people over with this.
The cool thing I see about this is just a lot of AD carries struggle against people with heavy burst or
Right,
really
this
good
is-
dive,
yes, this
like
is awesome.
Rengar.
Crazy.
it's so cool.
And
I
then
actually
you're just like,
want to.
nope.
And it's also why why I think of her like very similar to Callista is you also have that same idea. Like Callista's ultimate can be aggressive if you want to use it aggressively.
Yeah.
Same in this sense. Like if you want to use your ult aggressively and maybe take on, some people that you shouldn't or defend a turret that you may not be able to, like same general concept. Like it's a very interesting ultimate. I want to try her as ADC personally.
I've seen more success in the jungle. Not to say that AD carry doesn't work. I've seen people take her mid lane. Like when we were
can see it
doing
work
in-house
really
the other
well,
day,
mid
we had
lane.
people take them in every lane, I think. And both like they worked to mix success, but you could definitely highlight the strengths of a good Kindred being able to get those stacks.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
using the ult effectively.
For sure.
So have fun with that out there.
I would definitely say also if you're completely new to the champ or want to know more about it, the Trinity Force podcast did a interview with one of the designers of
Yeah.
Kindred, and they went in a lot of detail. So I highly recommend checking that out if you're interested in finding out more about Kindred.
Really
Yep.
cool.
Super cool. Okay, moving on. Let's talk about our trinket tip, which is ward baiting, which is super, super fun. I think it's hilarious
yeah.
because people never realize what you're doing until after it's done, and then they're like, "Well, I'm
Shit.
dumb." They just got baited. But I mean, it's pretty. It sounds pretty rhetorical, right? Ward baiting. You bait somebody using a ward.
Oh, okay, that's what it means. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's pretty complicated. But anyway, basically what you do is you can drop a ward somewhere right in front of the enemy. Like, make it freaking obvious. And if you know that they sweep like stuff often, they will sweep it, and that gives you an opportunity to attack them because their focus is on a freaking ward because they want to make use of their, like, worst case scenario, they don't kill the ward, but they waste their, their red trinket. So I mean,
Yeah.
like even then that's still good. So basically you drop a ward, make them use their red trinket and attack them while they're doing it. And depending on where you do this, you could do it under turret where there's permanent vision and they can see it and you can easily pick them off. Like I do this all the time if like their turret's really low, right? Like, and I know I can finish it off in like 2 shots. I'll drop a ward. When they're going for the ward, I'll just shoot the turret one time, get a frost shot ready, and then shoot them once again, like kill the
Got
turret
'em.
and then kill them, and then they're all because they were too busy focusing on the ward and not looking at the turret.
Yeah, I mean, you can do this in less obvious places too, like bushes where they have a pink ward on.
Yes.
Yeah,
'Cause-
definitely.
Yeah.
I
That's
also
super
like this
fun.
with whatchamacallit. Behind the dragon pit on the other side of red buff, if you're on the blue side, there's that little tiny bush that leads into the dragon that everyone always wards. Now, if you drop a ward there as Blitzcrank and like the enemy support's
The
gonna
level
go
1 strategy with
they're
Blitz.
they're gonna go. They have to clear that ward. Like
Yeah.
no, not the level 1 strategy. This is like they're gonna try and ward out the
Yeah.
dragon
Okay.
and get.
Yeah, it's
Like they're gonna
Same
try and
thing.
clear it and then hook, bam, ward
Uh-huh.
baited.
Dead or blown flash. Worst, like again, but worst
Yeah.
case scenario, you still get something out of it. So it's pretty useful.
pink wards especially, it's huge. Like you have
Everybody
to use
wants to kill a pink
5.
ward.
Yeah, it takes
Everybody.
5.
And that
So, I
is
mean,
the
like-
funniest thing in the world too.
Even in a 80 carry with full attack speed, that takes 2 seconds.
Yeah, it's super
To clear.
funny. Like it's really interesting when you're like just toss it in the middle of like a fight, because oftentimes like if there's no minions there and the ADC is like orb
Attack-
walking, they'll
yeah, attack
attack
moving.
the damn ward. I've seen it happen. It's happened to me. It's super funny because they'll just be like, "Oh, okay, I attacked the ward instead of the person."
Yeah. I mean, as long as we're like on the subject of using wards for things other than warding, blocking thresh lanterns.
Yeah, you can do that. It's tricky. It doesn't
Yeah.
always
It's,
work.
yeah, it's
but
just not guaranteed, but it does work.
I think the
Is it
ultimate
coded
board.
as a minion?
Everything's coded as a minion. Don't
When-
if
Just
you're
assume
ever
it's a
in
minion.
doubt, it's a minion. More
Champions are coded as
minion.
So
Minions.
I'm curious if it's coded as a minion as soon as it spawns in, similar to traps from what's his face?
You mean,
Shaco.
like-
Shaco
yeah.
traps are the same thing. If you drop a jib in front of a thresh as he's hitting it, and it just
Is that what
as
it's
soon as
called?
I call it a jib. Jack in the Box. I just called it a jib.
Oh, okay.
Jack in the Box takes way too long. Just fucking jib.
That's
Anyway.
oh my god! I never made that connection. Why they called them jibs? Now I feel like my
Today you
my-
learned. Anyway, you
mind
can do the same
blown.
thing. So maybe it's the same thing with wards, that they're just
True.
programmed like that. They're a minion for like a quarter second or something.
Something like that, yeah.
The most classic ward bait is, and this is actually really advantageous. If you have a lead in lane to the point where you can basically just all in someone, doing an aggressive pink ward in your lane brush is like super advantageous because A, you have complete vision in there until somebody comes to clear it, and B, you know that if they overextend to try and clear it, you just kill them. So
yep.
That one's
Just
super
pink.
fun. And don't be afraid that it's gonna die, because you gotta know, like, it's gonna die.
I
Of
get
course it's
super
gonna
defensive
die.
about my pink wards.
Like do get
Bot
defensive
lanes.
about it, but at the same
Motherfucker,
time,
that's my pink
but at
ward.
the same time, like, don't overcommit to defending that pink ward. Okay, let's move
Yeah.
on. So, what the fuck is that item? It's rather new. Well, I mean, not new.
It's kind of it's Rylai's
kinda
Crystal Scepter.
changed.
We need to make this intro for this shit work.
Yeah.
But well, okay. So we're talking about Rylai's Crystal Scepter today for our items.
it's a cool item.
I like
It
this
is,
item.
and I mean it got to change what back
changes.
for what patch was that?
15?
Something like that.
14?
Back with the rest of the AP items, so it got a
I think
few
it's
things
14.
changed around. Its recipe is now a little bit different. It's built from a needlessly large rod, amplifying tome, and a giant's belt.
This is awesome. I mean, real quick about the build path. You have so many options right there. Like
Yeah.
435, 850, 400, 1000, 1250. Like, these are your options as far as like what you want to buy from it. Super cost effective as far as working towards. Like, awesome build path. Super cool.
Yeah. So now the recipe reads it'll give you 400 health and 100 ability power, and the slowing passive on abilities.
And the slowing passive is pretty, like, that's what they
It's-
really changed. It used to be shit because it didn't work on AoE. And, like, what was the point at that point? Like, it just wasn't as effective. But now it's almost as effective on AoE as it is on single targets.
Yeah, it's honestly huge because I mean, if you think about what this item is good for, it's good for a champion. Like, it gives you a little bit of tankiness, it gives you a little bit of AP, and it gives you a little bit of a slow. But the health alone or the AP alone wouldn't be that great. It's really reliant on that slow. And when they made it so that way, like a lot of AoE abilities also apply a pretty strong slow, all of a sudden it made it like really effective on a lot of champions that were already kind of into the item.
Yeah. I really
And I
like
mean-
this item.
Aside from just the slow, the amount of AP that you're still getting it compared to other AP items still makes it really competitive
Oh,
for
totally.
wanting to get like damage,
Oh, totally. I mean,
along with getting an extra 400 health.
and if you're fitting, like, and you look at who this is built on, Elise, Rumble, Vlad, you know, like, just to name a few. These are champion, like, tanky, bruiser-esque mages, you know? Like, and this just fits them so perfectly. Keep them pinned down and just continuously beat them down with,
Exactly.
with like, hard, continual damage.
I love it on Vladimir because
So good on
I mean,
Vlad.
he has a passive that benefits from health. But
Yeah.
he's a champion that does periodic damage, like Asterishan said, and he doesn't really have any crowd control. So this kind of covers a whole lot for him, and just like all these different synergies with things that he really wants in his kit, and like it's a fantastic item on him. Like it's a huge spike.
So can't leave out Singed in this too. Oh, god.
Yeah,
Oh god.
Well, okay, so actually, speaking of Singe, because I agree, it's really good on him. But because of the dot, it made me think: does this like? It was always something that I thought about, and I guess I just never looked it up. But does the slow apply on Leandri's procs, like the magic damage from it? Because like if it did, that would kind of suck. So you wouldn't want to build it on anybody if you got Leandri's. Well, because like every time it ticked, it would reapply a lesser version of the slow, because the dot would tick, and then the slow would be the lesser version of the slow would be applied rather than the 40%. You see what I'm saying? So like, say you hit him with damage and the 40% is initially applied, but the Leandri's
like say you hit him with a
ticks,
single target spell,
but the
like
Leandri's
Rumbles.
ticks, yeah. Leandri's ticks immediately after and reapplies a new Rylai's add-on, or the new Rylai's passive.
I think they changed that the way they reworked slow stacking.
Okay. That's what I was curious about. Yeah, that's what I was asking.
How about we, for the listeners who don't know, we should explain why Rylai's and Leandri's are commonly associated with one another.
Okay. So, I
go
mean,
for it.
well, Leandri's, I mean, its big thing is the burn. Basically, when you have Rylai's, you are guaranteed to double the damage of that burn on all of your abilities.
Because the Leandri's burn is it does double if you have some sort of slow attached to one of your spells.
Yeah.
So it synergizes really, really well. And now it will synergize even better if they remove that, like, if they did remove that, it applies a new passive of Rylai's rather than keeps the old one.
Yeah, you do see a lot of champions lumping them together, and it's kind of like a little bit of a tank build, but it's still a lot of damage. Like,
it's super tanky. It's like, I mean, it's straight health AP. Health AP utility.
If you're like playing someone like Elise who can kind of go for a build like that, if you're snowballing and you get Rylai's and Leandri's, like that combo is pretty scary.
That's 700 health and 180 ability power plus the
passives,
double damage burn and slow
magic pen.
So like that's why I've seen a bunch of Singe like completely forgetting about Tyr and Roa and just rushing straight into Leandri's and Rylai's. Rylai's then Leandri's.
Interesting. I don't often see people skip the Roa just because now after Roa got buffed even more, it's such a great item even for Singed.
Well, I mean, like
definitely skipping on Tyr for sure. Anyway, we're not talking about Singed. We were talking about.
Don't have enough time to talk about shit. I hate this.
So let's actually let's move on into our win conditions, which I'm actually really excited for this conversation.
Me too.
This is gonna be good. So I mean, we had a lot of posts and a lot of comments about what we meant when we said win conditions over the last few weeks, because it has popped up a lot, starting with Horse, and that is something that is common, especially in higher level play, is that idea of that concept of win conditions and being aware of those things. And I say being aware of them because I think a lot of listeners may already kind of have a feeling they know what we mean by win conditions just by deriving their own conclusions by listening to the words. Like win conditions, what does that mean? The condition in which you win, obviously. So you may already kind of do this to some level. So don't be, we're going to kind of break this down to like a lesser value so you can really understand it simplistically, but then we'll get into the heart of it and why it's so important as well. So what do you guys think? What's the best way we could define what a win condition is to somebody that's new to the idea?
I think the thing to consider with win conditions is, before we get right into the definition itself, is just that they're incredibly important, because win conditions allow you to guide your decision making. And League of Legends is as much as it's an action game, it's also a strategy game. And if you are able to recognize what your win conditions are, you can use that to your advantage at various stages of the game, which is why we can't even really fit this whole discussion into one episode.
Yeah.
And I like to think about it as using your advantages to target your opponent's weak spots.
And there's a lot of analysis in that statement right there.
Yeah.
Like that seems rather straightforward, but being able to do that requires like directive and diligence. So
And just a lot of game knowledge in general. Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, I mean, I kind of categorize them and define them for us in the doc, and I kind of like the number 2. This number 2 and 3 I think are really important to me because there are specific qualifications that define a win condition.
Okay.
They're chosen first and foremost. They are choices. Like win conditions, you always have a way of winning. Almost always. Like there's at some point that you will have a mathematical disadvantage to the point where it's like they have to fuck
It's
up for you to
almost,
win. Yes,
It's
but
insurmountable.
almost always there's a win condition that will get you an advantage that will lead to victory. There is. And finding out what that is will, eventually get you there. And it's a choice. It's always a choice. So, these are things that you instantly can think of. Like thinking of a choice is playing offensively or defensively right there. Like that could be that's almost characterized as a win condition. So
I think maybe just scaling it back a little bit because we're about to dive really deep.
Yeah, for sure.
So
and then I want to go to my other super point, my other critical point.
Sure.
The attainability part. Like they can't be impractical. And they can't be based off of the enemy's response. So you can't rely on you getting you can't rely on the enemy screwing up for you to complete a win condition. You see what I mean? Win conditions should be directives that are attainable by you personally, not necessarily because somebody screwed up.
So scaling this back, I view a win condition as I once heard it defined as a condition that needs to be met in order to win the game. And while that's somewhat true, it's in a lot of ways, it's about looking at the opportunities presented, and it's about saying, okay, this is what my champion's capable of, or this is what my team is capable of. And I'll focus more on champions for this episode. This is what my champion's capable of. This is the situation. Based off of this champion in this situation, I'm going to go for this strategy to win the game or get an advantage in this situation.
Yeah, there are events that you are completing to get a foothold into the game, and to get a victory is a series and collection of these. You get enough completed win conditions, you get those dragons, you get those turrets, you get those items, you get those levels. Eventually those stack up to just meaning an ultimate win. Like they just immediately you'll get enough and then that's it, you won. The last win condition will be the Nexus.
And I think it might sound a little confusing when we use these general terms.
Well, I think like the biggest one, like I know people have heard before, is late game. We have a late game team. I play Vayne.
It's a win
that
condition.
is a late game champion. That is a win condition. We have to play this game long enough so that our champions outscale them.
Absolutely.
And that's actually that's starting to get into something, and I know we're going to cover a lot of that in another episode. But it's not necessarily that you have to do that, but there is an opportunity there because of the situation. You're playing Vayne. Vayne scales extremely well, and if you get to that stage of the game and you win a team fight, that's a way to win the entire game.
But at the same time, if you don't complete these objectives, these win conditions, you almost have no chance of winning. Like if you just don't do anything and don't complete these win conditions and these goals you set out for yourself, then you will not accomplish anything and you won't win the game. So by default they are necessity, but as a whole they are a necessity, not as an individual.
Exactly. You might have more than one way to win, but if you don't satisfy any of those, then you're not going to win.
Exactly.
So I think maybe it might make more sense to start diving into some more specific examples or break this down, because I think we're starting to get too general and it might not make sense to somebody who hasn't seen an example. So Asterisk, and what should we focus on for this episode, and what are we going to talk about?
Well, I mean, I kind of wanted to have, help the listeners understand, like, what is this concept? What does this mean? Deriving win conditions for myself, especially out of lane, because that's the simplistic and most basic form, right? That's where we spend the first 20 minutes of the game. That's where we spend, I mean, a good majority of League of Legends is spent in the early, in the early game, because that's the first place that happens. So starting there is always a good place, it's a good place to start. So, understanding win conditions in your lane, what will cause you to win your lane, and then setting goals for yourself to accomplish those win conditions. These are, it's kind of like a linear path. And I was thinking about it, and I really like this example, but your fundamentals complete your goals. The goals satisfy the win condition, and you get enough win conditions to win the game. Kind of how it goes. So if your fundamentals are in check, and your goals are, accomplished through those good fundamentals, all you need now are the right win conditions to complete the game. And getting that idea proper and cemented into your mind, being like, okay, if I get this, then this will help me satisfy this type of idea. You'll get more mechanical, more methodical, quicker, just all around better in your decision making, because things will just become natural. You'll just be like, okay, I know from this, I just do this. And I mean, that doesn't say a lot right there, this and this, but the examples and scenarios will come as, as they do.
So do we want to start with like lane matchups here? Just talking about lanes here?
Yeah, I think that's good. I mean, go ahead.
Well, I think right off the bat here, this is like where you start to think about like your champion versus their champion, what you need to do to get a win for either you or for your team. It doesn't mean that you're the one killing them. It's you're winning. Winning can be not dying. It can be out farming. It can be trading objectives better. It's whatever that champion excels at, and that's what you really need to know as far as what your champion is good at and what the enemy champion is good at. And that's why you really need to learn to spend those. You have 2 minutes before the game really starts, plus the extra time spent loading into the game. You have all that time to think, okay, what does my champion do? What does their champion do? How am I going to win?
That's some of my favorite moments in the game, is that, like, okay, this is exactly like, this is my plan for the next like 3 minutes. Well, because I mean, I'm an ADC main. One of my first win conditions is that I want to get to level 2 first. Like that's a level, or that's like a 3-minute win condition right there. And a lot of people generalize win conditions in being these like end to late game things, but they are not. They are little milestones that we get that ultimately lead to victories, So like my level 2 leading to the all-in that I want to do, that's that's a win condition right there.
Yeah, and you learn to plan around those win conditions. Like as Haberdashing was just mentioning, as the game loads, and this could take a while depending on the rigs of the people.
Who's got a damn potato?
I actually sometimes really like long loads. If I'm like really stressed about the lane, I'm like, what the fuck do I do against this?
Yeah,
I've got a cousin with a terrible computer, and we're actually all really happy when we play with him because we get a chance to like pee and like come back and like get a drink of water and then start the game. But jumping back here, it's really you're gonna see your champion, and almost in every game you're gonna have a good idea of who you're gonna be laning against. There's iffy situations where you won't know right away, but you can kind of reasonably guess between a few, and then at that point, you need to look at your champion and say, okay, who am I playing this game? What are my champion's strengths? And what are my champion's weaknesses? And depending on what those strengths and weaknesses are, it's all relative to the champion that you're laning against. Because what might seem like a strength might not work against the enemy champion, or what they might have a strength that offsets what you're good at, or maybe they have something in their kit that completely punishes your weakness. And if you don't recognize that, it's hard to figure out what your win condition is.
Like playing against an assassin in mid lane. Your win condition is not, I have to get kills, I have to take the tower. Your win condition can simply be, I don't fucking die.
Yeah. And Frost and Haber are alluding to this idea of factors. Like, what are the factors in the lane that are going to affect what you do and how you play? Like, abilities, stats, like champion. There's all sorts of factors that go into, the determining initial or like end decision of what you do. You got to look at all those factors together as a whole. And it may seem like a lot, but we kind of broke it down fairly recognizably, I think. Kind of separated them from what I feel most importantly would be the two most importantly, and then leading into what's not as important initially for lane. Because we do get into like a couple. I'm not saying that objectives and morale aren't that important, but
No,
those are at the last of
but-
the list.
And it's really hard to speak about this in generalities because it really is specific to the game that you're in that matchup.
Yeah.
You said how many times, no two games are really alike.
Yeah.
But to that point, what I think might be helpful for us and the listeners is if we just start giving a few examples.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, I know we all kind of have our own mains and things like that. If we can sort of run through this logic we have here and explain how do you identify a win condition in a particular lane matchup, then maybe we can pass that on and show you how it's done.
Right. So I can list off a couple of
Go
things.
for it.
Okay, so for Ezreal, basically, I have two thoughts when I get into a lane: is whether I'm going to be able to reliably poke them. If I am, then I will play more aggressively, maybe even like foregoing a tier, going right into Trinity Force or Bloodthirster or something, and try to build an advantage as much as possible. And that is one way that I can snowball my own lane. The other option is if I can't get a whole lot of poke because they're good about hiding behind their minions, they have a very good sustain lane, then I can decide, okay, I'm going back early, I'm getting a tier first, and I'm going to, just play safe until we get to more of a team fighting phase where it's a lot easier to poke out champions. And that's where I can start to shine then, once my tier is stacked up at the 22-minute mark.
Yeah, and what's really awesome about what Haber just said is he didn't just come into the game and say, okay, Ezreal's good at poking, so I'm going to do the same thing every game. He's saying, okay, Ezreal has these tools in his kit, but this is what I'm going up against, so I'm going to adapt my play based off of what I'm laning against.
Yeah. Precisely.
So what he's pointing out here is his win condition versus a sustain lane is a little bit different against a weaker early game bot lane.
Yeah,
and it's
exactly.
a little different in bot lane because it's a 2v2, so you have to keep a few different champions' abilities in mind.
Yeah.
How about we go around the horn here? Asterisks.
Sure.
What is give an example with, I'm guessing, Lux.
Sure, I'll do Lux because people are expecting it. Okay, so with Lux, I have a few win conditions, two more predominant than the third, but the two main ones, are very similar to haberdashings. If I can poke them down and with a little bit of bonus, if I can poke them down and not push the wave, then even better. But if I can poke them down, then great, I'm going to be as aggressive as I can. If they let me get I don't necessarily come up with my win condition immediately, just because I need to gauge whether or not the enemy will play a specific way. If they let me get auto...
Skill is a huge factor.
That's so huge.
If they let me get auto harass and passive procs on them, then I'm just going to fuck with them all day. Like, that's my win condition, is just straight up harass. Farm while I can, but get them out of lane and get me a level advantage so I can start roaming as fast as I can and potentially get a kill. But the flip side of that is if I know that he's good and, he might
or
be...
Or
I'm
or
sorry.
they.
I do assume a lot, but it's just kind of like a... It's just kind of like a habit that he, the human, the mankind, the person I'm talking about, I don't know, the soul on the other end, okay? If they're good... then I have to reevaluate some of the things.
You
real
never
quick-
know if someone's a dog on the internet, Asterisk.
That's
How
true.
dare you?
That's true. I'm sorry.
Real
That's
quick,
soul
you don't
over
know
there.
when they put their paws on the keyboard what they're going to be like. But once the game starts up, to Asterisk's point, you should try and get a feel for how your opponent is playing.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
And then make that decision. Because like Asterisk was saying, auto harass might not make sense in certain matchups if you could get punished really hard for it, but if the enemy doesn't realize to punish you for it, then you shouldn't stop.
So and it's it's also champion dependent. So if I'm going up against like a melee Talon Zed, someone like that, then I'm definitely going to be auto-attacking them. Every single time they go in for CS, I'm auto-attacking them. But if it's like an Ahri or a LeBlanc, then I'm going to be, I'm watching my step a little more. I'm careful. I'm meticulous about what I choose to proc as far as my passives and stuff like that. So it's just this idea of changing it up. But my win conditions are I mean, they're pretty straightforward. At level 2, I try and go ham if I think that I can potentially get a kill, because at level 1 I open with a spell every time. Secret of the trade, if you ever play against me, that's what happens. So if I hit them and they let me get an auto attack off for free without letting me take any damage, then I will just level 2 all in them almost every single time.
Yeah, I was
that's
about
my
to
win
say,
condition.
will you mention the level 2 all
Yes,
in
I
with
will.
Lux?
Yeah, I will. That's my win condition. And if I don't kill them, I force them out, make them pop 2 pots, and I back off and continue farming. And then I switch a nuke.
A special tip. Why don't you explain why level 2 is so important for Lux?
Sure. Level 2 Lux has some of the highest base damage that you can do as a mage, because it's funny, your passive actually does more damage than your abilities, because you have technically 3 damage dealing abilities rather than just the 2. And not a lot of people have that, especially at level 2. So you have that option, but at the same time, there's so much catch potential in like minions, and there's so many sources of damage right there. So if I hit level 2 before they do, they either blow flash and I get a flash blown, or they die if I'm in the right situation. And that's me, like that's my win condition. Like if I get level 2 and I get into the right spot at the right time, like that's my directive right there.
Yeah. And to that point, if for some reason he doesn't just get a massive lead at level 2, he hasn't necessarily lost. It's just that condition or opportunity is no longer there.
Exactly. That was my win condition at that moment. That was my goal for the time leading up. So, and then you know how I mentioned goals, and there is a separation between like win condition and goals. And we kind of breezed over it, but I guess I could say, because I just mentioned it, goals are how you accomplish the what you want to accomplish. So the how I do it is getting to level 2 all in, or the what is level 2 all in. The how I do it is pushing really hard and getting early harass. And that's my goal, is to push really hard and get early harass, to do the end win condition.
Yeah. So I know you're going to talk Twisted Fate, right?
Let's hear it.
And
If
this
I
is
play my
interesting.
cards right.
Yeah.
Oh god damn it! Because you have, it's not only just about the lane, since you have that global pressure with TF.
Exactly. So Twisted Fate is kind of weak in most matchups in mid lane, and the reason for that is because he's very reliant on his pick a card. And there's a lot of people that can punish him when he has to get into the range where he would use it. And once it's on cooldown, he's really defenseless, doesn't really have a lot of ways to maneuver or out-trade people. And his damage early isn't really that strong, and he's cooldown gated. So all in all, his early game is not really about, 420 pentakilling the enemy mid laner.
No scope.
It's more about playing the lane smart and conservatively and punishing mistakes where applicable. So what I do when I go into lane is, like we mentioned, I look at this champ select, I see who am I laning against, and I say, okay, how reliably does this enemy champion punish me? How much is their burst? And above all, can they dodge gold cards or mitigate gold cards? Because that's like a game changer. Laning against a Fizz is completely different.
I was just thinking, I was like, yep, Fizz. I know exactly who you're talking about.
Everybody hates Fizz.
I love Fizz.
He's fun, but it's not fun when you think you're great and then
it's fun for 1 out of 10 people.
Okay. So to put it in perspective, Fizz with a flask can just outduel a TF with a Doran's ring, because that's not what TF's strengths are. But you have to learn to play around that, and I think Fizz is a great example. He's given me headaches in the past, but I've gotten better at it. If I go into a lane against someone like Fizz, I know that my win condition at the first 2 levels before he gets his gap closers and abilities is to get him weak enough so that way as soon as he is strong enough to gap close, level 3, level 4, I'm not going to insta-die once he has all his abilities. And that's huge for the way the lane plays out. But I know we already talked about the strengths weaknesses. What I wanted to talk about with TF that Haber first led off with is that at certain levels, certain champions get different power spikes, and for TF that's a global map pressure power spike. So my win condition in the early game, in almost all matchups, unless the enemy laner is just not playing up to my level, is really just to control the lane, make sure I don't miss any CS, and then shove the wave forward and apply pressure to side lanes with my ultimate.
Yeah. And this is a win condition that's super unique to Twisted Fate. Like, and it's awesome because like that's he's one of the few mid laners that can provide that kind of win condition. So it's awesome.
Yeah. I'm not gonna 1v1 at level 6 like 100 to 0 someone. That's not what Twisted Fate's all about. There's other champions like Zed that might be more interested in doing that, but Twisted Fate, his power spike is map mobility and being able to instantly show up somewhere and hard CC someone, and that is like what I use to assert dominance in the early game and help my team towards getting, leads in lanes, getting kills, assists, maybe doing it to stop a 2v2 and then get a dragon afterwards. So that's what I'm focused on.
Yeah. And you got to look at what your champion, the champion that you're playing, like what their strength, what their unique aspect of the game that they can add is. And, if you evolve a strategy around them, like specifically, you can find a lot of success. Like, I mean, that's why Twisted Fate is so good. And you just like you fight against a good Twisted Fate and you're like, you tore us apart, like just stitch by stitch, because he just applies that pressure just everywhere. He's bot, then he's top, then he's back to mid, like, and that's something that he's just really good at. And there are champions that are super uniquely, like, very gifted at specific things. That's pretty cool.
Oh my god.
So
did you buy that?
that's awesome.
I might have bought that.
Holy
Is that from
shit.
that's definitely from the cinematic.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like the $250 Twisted Fate
Damn.
statue.
Worth every penny.
Holy
It was-
shit, man.
It was on discount the first week it was sold.
Oh, thank God it was
So
on discount.
it's totally worth it.
Here I'm debating if I'll get that championship thresh little thing. Fuck it. Twisted Fate, man. Shit.
Yeah, this is a boss.
But yeah,
That's
so-
really cool.
And I mean, the whole point of this episode, guys, is to get you thinking about like how to derive your own win conditions. Like, what do you look at? What are the factors that you analyze to come up with these win conditions for yourself? Like we talked about, ability gating. Being a specific level, that's a win condition. Getting to 6, like even just getting to 6. It's as simple as that. And they're comprehensive sometimes. It's like getting getting 2 items that synergize well with each other, warrior and like Bork, and then ganking, because that's a huge power spike. Hitting level 9 for some people. Third item. Like it could be a lot of different things that these win conditions that you set for yourselves. So
And this is again why it can be really beneficial to start like maining a champion or something, because
Yes,
you
absolutely.
really get
I
to
was
sit down and
about
learn about that.
nice.
The
Yeah.
number one thing probably the most asked thing when people write into 4 Wards, that in my experience, is people asking about counter picks and responding to counter picks and dealing with them. And we always lean towards actually just picking a few champions and learning them really well, because all these win conditions and all these like exception scenarios where you're up in this lane matchup as this champion, it's like impossible to learn them unless you actually play a lot of that champion.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to know that, okay, if I go to blue card a minion against Zed that's level 6, I'm going to get 100 to 0'd until that shit happens to me.
Yeah.
But now I know how to play around it. I'll cycle cards when he ults, I'm going to gold card him so that way he can't get his burst off. Like, these things you won't learn until you actually learn to like practice a champion over and over again and have played in a lot of different matchups.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, let's see. What else do we have?
I think we got to talk
got
about the
so
one
much.
other person who shows up to your lane all the time.
The jungler.
Shit.
The jungler. That asshole.
It's a huge deal.
Finally
It
can
is.
say it. He's not here.
Yeah. It's a factor. No, it is. You're right. It's a factor. Like, and it's an important factor too. And both of them too. Like you and you know, we're talking about enemy jungler, but you know, also your jungler too. Like that is a factor. You're not always going to rely on it, and oftentimes my win conditions completely neglect them, but they are a factor. And if I know that like my jungler is coming in, I will incorporate that factor. But I wouldn't recommend necessarily relying on it. It is still there to take note of. But enemy jungler, definitely. I'll
apply an example to my champion, because I think it's easier to understand things with an example. If I'm playing TF, I said he was kind of weak early, but one thing he can technically do is he can card people and harass them when they're trying to CS under their tower, which is extremely risky if you don't know where the enemy jungler is.
Yeah.
But if I know that the enemy jungler is someone like a Warwick, like I'm really not that afraid of him showing up at level like 3 and like trying to casually run at me to stop me. So I'm not afraid to
fun.
It's basically a free pass for the first few levels to like shove the lane and abuse your lane opponent.
It just made me think of Terry Scary Terry. You can run, but you can't hide, bitch. It's just like Warwick running at you.
God damn it. The fuck, man? You have a problem.
That was just for you, Haber.
And to give a extreme opposite example, if I'm playing someone like TF and the enemy laners are like LeBlanc and the jungler is like a Xin Zhao, I'm basically like playing like a little bitch for the first few levels.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
That's terrifying. That's like that's like epitome of scary mid lane.
Or a Shaco, like Shaco, Jesus.
Shaco, fuck Shaco. Lee Sin too. But anyway, I mean, again, these are us analyzing, looking at the jungler, and being like, okay, this is not a threat. I can do this early. These are my options now because that jungler is not threatening. And
to add on to that, a lot of those early pressure junglers that you need to account for, if you learn to play around them, that in itself is almost a win condition, because if Shaco isn't able to snowball the game early and you're just like refusing to let him get kills and assists all over the map, I mean, he's applying a bit of pressure, but he's not going to snowball the same way, and he won't scale as late as someone like a Sejuani.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, Sejuani, that's a name I haven't heard in a while.
Now there's a name I haven't heard in a long
People
time.
got bored of her.
Well, you know, we posted on Reddit asking for some feedback. So I think now would be a good time to talk about the listener question that we had, because we were curious about what some of the people wanted to know about win conditions. And we do still suggest that if you have questions, please go over to that Reddit subreddit and that thread and post your questions, and we will be more than happy to talk about it next episode. But yeah, so we had a question. I didn't put his name in.
We'll post it later, I'm sure.
I'm sorry, sir. I'm sorry, friend. Are there specific roles or champions that contribute more to your team or the other team's win condition?
Yeah, no.
In
yes and
in
no.
different ways, but more often than not, they balance out to basically equating to no. Yes.
I'll put it this way.
Yes, no. Yes.
If your team is united around a common theme or a common win condition as a team, there's certain champions that might fit that or be more important in the team's win condition than others. Like, I mean, the most common example is the Juggermaw comp that you hear in like LCS, where people just build a whole team around a Kog'Maw. And if you don't have the Kog'Maw, I mean, it's kind of hard to do the team.
Yeah, totally. But I mean, at the same time, like, you will have you will have teams and comps that are orientated around sometimes a specific champion. So oftentimes it'll be a directive like split pushing or team fighting, but sometimes it could be like, ah, shit, we really just have to play protect the Vayne. Like, and that is sometimes, yes, he is contributing to that. But at the same time, that doesn't take any responsibility away from you. Like, it is then your win condition to make sure that he stays protected, while it's his win condition to fuck everything up in sight. Like, it's different sides. Like, while a team win condition is one thing, your individual win condition leads to that ultimate win condition, and those are different. Those are completely different, and they are not more important than the other. The Vayne can't do anything without the support backing her up.
Yeah.
We're going to have to cover a lot of this in our part 2 of win conditions discussion. Yeah. But you say in your question, how can I identify my team composition is lacking a win condition? It's not really, your team is never really lacking a win condition. There's usually an option. It's not always an easy option. As Asterishan said, it might rely somewhat on the enemy team making a mistake or getting caught. But there's always something that you can look for in your team versus the other team. And it's really what you have to ask yourself, especially in a solo queue environment, is what is a win condition for the team, and how does my champion specifically play a role in that win condition?
Like I kind of understand what you're saying. Like, I know, like, we always talk a lot about like Juggernaut. That's very well defined composition. In solo queue, people will just kind of pick whatever, and it can be a little bit harder to identify, right away, what is our like so-called composition. You don't have to worry about that as much. I would go more off of what Froz and Asterishan are saying. Play a laning phase, see how that goes, and then from there decide what is your priority in either objectives on the map or defending your team. Like, if you didn't do so stellar, try to support someone else or do something so you can get yourself back in the game.
Yeah, and I think to add on to that, what sometimes happens is it may seem like you lack a win condition because like the champions don't seem to synergize with one another. Like you have like a Tryndamere who loves to split push and not be with the team, but like the rest of your team loves 5v5s. Like you're gonna have to make a decision in that game whether or not it's more advantageous for the team to actually show up to team fights, even if it's not normally what your Tryndamere excels at or what you're normally planning on doing. It might for that game be your win condition.
Yeah, out of necessity. Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, it's definitely tough for sure. It's hard to like pinpoint what you gotta focus on, especially getting your team to focus on one thing. But
if this didn't totally answer it, just reply to us again on Reddit, and we'll make sure we finish that up in the next week's episode.
All right, how do we want to take this question?
Oh boy, do we have enough time to do
I
this?
think we do.
It's a good question. I think we should.
Okay. Yeah, we do. We have enough time.
But I wouldn't say who the listener is.
Yeah,
don't say who the listener is.
Yeah. Okay. So we had this question come in, and we were.
Wait, real quick.
Are we gonna talk about this on air?
Exactly. Yeah. Do we want to be? Should I be real or should I be like filtered?
We gotta talk about this one. It's a good one.
Okay. So
I'm not.
First of all, whoever wrote this, thank you for writing into us. We really appreciate that you trust us enough to give you advice on this.
Seriously.
That being said, what you may hear may be like a little frank. It may not be exactly what you were looking for, but please just bear with us with an open mind here, okay? As we move forward.
We did talk about this a lot. Okay. We did talk about this a lot.
This is
you need to know.
Silence, everyone. I want to hear Haber read the question because this is good.
Hey guys, fairly new listener here, but love the episodes I've watched/listened to so far. They are my new way to make it through the workday. I am Silver 2 support main. I love Thresh, Blitz, and Malphite support. I also have a lovely girlfriend who picked up the game at the same time as me around the end of Season 3, and she loves to AD carry, meaning Miss Fortune, Vayne, and Sivir mostly. But I have come across a dilemma. I really do enjoy playing with her in a duo bot setting, but it seems as though when this happens, even if we snowball the lane to the best of our abilities and try to roam mid to help them, we still find little success as of late. It seems when we duo queue, we get matched up against teams who are much more difficult to go against and get teammates who can't do well enough to still try to pull a victory. When I solo queue or play with another friend who also means AD carry, we seem to do better. I don't know if we just mesh better or if it's just a change in mindset. She is the type of person who never admits defeat, almost to the point of delusion. She refuses to surrender, which I admire and also hate, after being locked in a match for 50 plus minutes due to fear of hitting surrender, we still end up losing. I usually can only play at most 3 games a day. She's not one to take criticism well. I was wondering if I should stick it out and continue to duo with her and hopefully reach my goal of getting gold, or if I should play with one of the people who I know I'm more likely to win with. Are there any tips to maybe help me and her do better? Thanks for all the help.
You know, I didn't see that last question. I'm actually really happy that he did include that last question and didn't just assume that he needed to move on instead of playing with his girlfriend. So
there's a lot to unpack here.
Wow.
For sure, totally. So basically, this guy plays with his girlfriend and he feels like he is not playing as well as he does when he plays with this other buddy, who is also an ADC main. So he basically feels that his supporting is not as effective. I don't know, maybe she's just not as good as the ADC, or it's just not going as well.
It sounds to me like he's just finding out that his girlfriend is not on the same competitive wavelength or is just not as good, and he's basically asking, hey, should I go for gold and like abandon her, or should I stick with my girlfriend?
Yeah. Well, I
in
think,
a harsh way of putting it, yeah.
I think the first thing you gotta ask yourself is like, is it worth it to stop playing with her? Like not from
hello,
like not from
Sivir?
Not from. It's the worst Victoria skin to come out to date. You have to. I mean, you really do. You gotta ask yourself: is it worth like dropping playing with your girlfriend because you want to get to gold? And will you be able to have that conversation with her? Like ignoring all the stuff that we're about to say in advocacy of you playing with your girlfriend, can you legitimately say we're not gonna play duo queue anymore because I have to play with somebody else? Like, you gotta ask yourself that question.
If she's been playing since season 3, maybe she understands that too. I mean,
that's true.
I mean, there's a lot of girls out there, but there's only one season where you can get Victoria's Sivir.
God, Bros.
Okay, so I'm actually in advocacy that you should keep playing with your girlfriend, and I'll tell you why. I don't think she's the problem. I think she might be part of the problem, but I think you both as a group are the problem. Your mentality towards her and her mentalities in general, like your mentality towards her mentalities are the problem.
You said I do think it is a lot like it's a not just a mindset problem, but a communication problem between the two of you. Because like when you wrote this in and said we're doing worse as a duo, we looked that up.
We did. We looked and we did some pretty good investigating through op.gg and found out the girlfriend's account as well, and we did some snooping, and we found out that the win rates are identical. Like you playing with her and you playing with your buddy are actually exactly
roughly
the same.
identical.
Roughly identical. I mean, there's a little bit of disparity, but by like a % or 2. But
I mean,
overall,
like thinking you're still doing just about the same, even though you're
feeling like you have issues. Imagine if you felt like you didn't have issues and you could just be free and open to playing with her.
I mean,
like,
I think
that would be
part of it. This is like if you both enjoy playing League, you're going to play together, as long as you're together. And if you want to play with her, I do think there are some things outside of League that need to be worked on first. Because this is not just about in League stuff. There's definitely stuff that you guys are bringing into the game.
If she doesn't take criticism well, and especially if it's from you, there's options right there. Like if you want her to improve, fuck it, send her to us. Like I mean, we have a bunch of mindset podcasts.
I want you to go to your girlfriend.
She gets to this episode,
and you could.
You know those cardboard things that are at amusement parks that say you need to be this tall.
Episode 33.
You need to be this elo to duo with me, girlfriend.
When she gets to episode 33, just be like, okay, so it might have been about you. It might have been about you. But no, really, like, I don't necessarily think that duoing with somebody else is the solution. Like, we can clearly see through math that that's not necessarily the problem. And if you're willing to put in the work and fix it in that scenario, like in that case, I see way more potential for you having more success with her than with somebody else, because there's trust there.
Yeah.
There's a lot more trust there.
I really think...
Go for it.
Oh, I really do think the first step here is just talking to your girlfriend about this. And whether, I don't know, maybe we're totally off base. Maybe you guys
for sure
work fine together outside of League, but for whatever reason, once you guys get in League, there's just this mismatch in personalities that does not click. But you still need to talk about that too. Like, honey, when we're playing League, something's not gelling right, and either we need to fix that or we just don't play League together.
Exactly. I was going to scale it to that point and say, at the end of the day, you just need to ask yourself, you know, what's more important to me? Like, and it sounds to me, you said your girlfriend's lovely, and I'm gonna take your word for that. And if you enjoy playing with her, like, I mean, at the end of the day, if she wants to play with you and you like your girlfriend, like, you have to decide what's more important to you.
Exactly.
And if you feel like it used to work out well and it's not working out now, maybe you need to have a conversation like Haber said and figure out what's wrong. Or maybe you'll come to an agreement that, like, maybe if she wants to duo with you, you need to ask yourself, okay,
or set up duo nights.
Yeah, I mean, you said
duo date night.
Yeah,
Holy
you
shit.
said you can only play 3 games a day, but, like, in all honesty, that's more than a lot of people. Like, and if that's every day, like 3 games a day, that's 21 fucking games a week. Like,
That's good,
and
yeah.
if you spend even half of those played with your girlfriend, like on said duo night or multiple duo nights, like, that could be a thing.
Maybe
But, I mean, you could
I
compromise
envisioned
for
this
sure.
situation. I didn't look up the elos and all that stuff like you guys did, but
I mean, it doesn't really matter. And the discrepancy isn't...
if she's trying to play with you and you feel like she's holding you back, I mean, at the end of the day, you need to say to yourself, okay, like, she might be holding me back, but we can still get there, and, like, it's more important to me that I spend time with my girlfriend than, you know, getting to gold a couple days earlier and getting some digital pixels on a computer screen. Or you have to just reevaluate things. Like, it really should just be you deciding for yourself, like, okay, my girlfriend's more important to me, and if she's not, then maybe there's an issue there, but I don't want to get into that.
Well, this is hard. Like, if you care about your girlfriend enough to want to write in and try to find a way to solve this, I think if you decide to stop playing with her and going for gold, you're going to end up regretting it. And that is my personal opinion. It doesn't make it right, but...
And if you do that, first and foremost, fucking talk to her and explain why. You gotta tell her why. And if she's understanding, then great, but you also gotta know, like, that may be begrudgingly understood.
Yeah, I mean, you have to think about what her feelings are going to be. I mean, I know I have good friends that play, their boyfriend and girlfriend, and, like, we'll play together as a big group, but, like, they don't play together seriously, and, like, they have that understanding, like, they don't like playing, like, duos and serious games together. They kind of fly solo for that. But if she wants to spend that time with you, like, I mean, you should probably ask yourself, like,
I mean,
should
I'm
probably
fucking
want to
jealous
spend
here.
time with her.
Like, here I am, like, oh man, you know, that kind of sucks that you're not having so much success, but I'm fucking jealous. Like, I wish I had a girlfriend to play League of Legends with.
Didn't you have a horror
we never
story with
played-
Victorious Elise?
Oh yeah, though I mean, and I've played.
Yeah,
video games with
Asdrishan was
girlfriends
the guy
before,
that
just
said,
not
fuck
League.
her, I'm
Yeah,
getting
I
my
did do that.
Victorious
So
Elise.
I it was so worth it though. Victorious Elise.
Oh my god!
I mean,
But, like, your situation, like, you cared about that more than...
To be fair, Elise
With
is
your
way
girlfriend.
better than Sivir.
I guess, and not necessarily.
But that says something
like,
about the relationship,
she
too.
wasn't understanding enough for it that it was important to me, because it wasn't just like at the time. It was also like I was starting to get involved in.
But at that
T-Force
point, you
and
said,
Victorious
like,
Gaming too,
League...
so.
Getting this rank in League is more important than my girlfriend. I'm not trying to make judgments or anything,
Yeah.
but that's what you said.
For sure, yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah, and that speaks also to your relationship too. You know,
Yeah, we did
Do
not
you-
have like that was like it ended. Like clearly it ended. So
Yeah.
and I'm okay with it ending. Like it's done and gone, moved past. But I fucking Worth. Like if you think Victoria's Silver is Worth, which I think you're dumb if you do, but if you think it is, then go for it. But
It's more
Not
about
mine.
the rank, probably.
no, I agree. It's just like like I can tell you from my personal experience that like the only benefit, like the only thing I'm proud of out of getting gold and silver 3 was Victorious Elise. Like I'm not proud that I was gold in fucking season 3. It's season 3 and I'm on season 5. Like
Yeah.
it's gonna go away and eventually it's not gonna matter.
There's
Now,
going to be
you
other
really
seasons,
get-
but
yeah,
there's
you really-
only one of her.
Yeah, you just gotta ask yourself if Victorious Silver is worth said girlfriend. So
Yep. Definitely at least talk to her
Be
about it.
victorious.
So,
Silver. Anyway,
and once again, like, thanks for writing in
Yeah.
to us for this. I hope that
Totally.
you took the chance to at least listen to all of this here and not just writing us off as assholes
Yeah.
right away.
I hope so because we do mean well, and I mean
Yeah.
that.
This isn't easy, and I understand it being defensive about this. It can be really touchy.
Mm-hmm.
This is yeah.
And I mean, and if you think it would help, definitely like she could listen to our advice as well. And
Hell, I'll be a
potentially-
Dr. Phil mediator
Yeah,
for
like
you guys.
we could totally etch this out in an ideal situation.
Yeah.
But I think that will do it for tonight's cast, guys. We will see you next week with team win conditions. And don't forget, subreddit. Go post more
Subreddit.
more questions if you have any about win conditions in the in that subreddit.
And in general, for those of you who are trying to wrap up season 5 and reach whatever goals you're going for, best of luck. Climb
Yeah.
that ladder,
Yeah.
and
May the
hopefully you
cues be ever in your
victorious.
favor.
You have a month, so do it to it.
Yeah, a little under a month now. Cool.
Yeah. All right, guys.